Hey, what's going on everyone? You're here, right on time. So as you can see, I am in my truck right now. We are having some construction done in our home right now. We're having new flooring put in, so my YouTube set is currently disassembled. So I'm gonna be doing like a lot of content creators do and doing a few videos from my truck here. Should be fun. We'll improvise, we'll have fun, we'll make it work. I mean the acoustics though. Alright, so today I am here to talk about, of course, 28 years later. You have no idea how excited I've been for this one. This is, of course, the follow-up to the 2003 iconic undead film, 28 Days Later, and it's what I would say is very underrated sequel, 28 Weeks Later. Anyway, yeah, I rewatched 28 Days Later, and I watched 28 Weeks Later for the first time the day before I went to go see this new film. You know, it had been probably about a decade since I had seen 28 Days Later. I've seen it many times, but it had been a while, and you know, I was hoping that it still held up, and I'm happy to say it most certainly does. After all this time, and of course, you know, it was cool to finally watch 28 Weeks Later for the first time. I had heard it was pretty good, and you know, like, I can actually see why some people actually prefer it over 28 Days Later. I really can. I personally still like 28 Days Later a little better, but it's close. They're very close. The original 28 Days Later was, of course, helmed by master British filmmaker Danny Boyle, a very well-known and highly regarded filmmaker. At the time it was released, the grittiness of it and the way it was portrayed was like kind of new to filmmaking. 28 Days Later was also the first zombie movie to introduce like the fast, like hauling ass zombies, which later took over in zombie culture. Now, prior to that movie, zombies had always been like the traditional slow kind of lurking types, but this really pioneered a new sort of style of zombie films that followed after it. At the time, we hadn't seen anything that looked so raw and seemingly realistic. The film, of course, was also the breakout roles for Cillian Murphy and Naomi Harris, who have both gone on to have stellar acting careers. Now, in 2007, a sequel came out, 28 Weeks Later. Now, this one was not directed by Boyle or written by Garland, but they were on as producers, and I have to say, it was a solid sequel. I think they did a good job of continuing the story where the original left off and kind of expanded on some of the material and world building at the time. Without a doubt, 28 Weeks Later definitely wins the prize for best opening scene. Holy crap, I was on edge during that entire opening scene, and just, God, the stakes. So well done. So anyway, naturally, when I heard that they were going to be making another one of these movies set in this universe, I was excited, but was also reserved in said excitement, because lately I feel like it's been a trend for Hollywood to resurrect dormant IPs and franchises and either remake them or try to continue a story that hasn't been touched on in about a decade or two. Now, what gave me faith with this one is that we were getting the return of Danny Boyle and also Alex Garland writing the script. Now, Alex Garland, who wrote the original 28 Days Later, has since gone on to have himself a stellar directing career, directing some powerhouse films of recent years. Now, with the two of them back, I knew that we would at least be in for something good and grotesque and memorable. All right, so on to 28 Years Later. What are my thoughts about this movie? Well, I'm not gonna lie. Right out of the gate, after watching it, I wasn't sure. I actually had to sit on it for about a week before deciding whether I really liked the movie or not. Now, let me just follow that up by saying that there's a lot going on in this movie, and it's really kind of a lot to take in. This one is set, of course, 28 years later after the rage virus outbreak in the original film, and it centers around a small Scottish village where these people live a simple and kind of utopian life. Barricaded on an island with only one way in or out, there's a whole community of people that live there, and they've facilitated their own guidelines and laws within this community they've created. Now, the film follows a young boy named Spike, and the first half of the movie chronicles his journey to manhood, if you want to call it that, as he ventures beyond the island and out into the open world for the first time with his dad on a hunt, killing infected, and along the way discovering all types of unknown horrors that they didn't know awaited them. While the second half of the movie kind of takes a different turn, and Spike spends that time taking his seemingly terminally ill mother to try and find help from what they believe to be a supposed doctor that lives out in the hills, beyond the island. Right off the bat, one positive thing I will say is the production is excellent. The post-apocalyptic world 28 years down the road from when we first experienced it looks rough. It has become a lush jungle of uncertainty and all kinds of nihilistic horror. There are now classes of infected. There's multiple types of side effects that, with 28 years of evolution of the rage virus, have brought untold horrors. There are now these kind of fat, sickly zombies that can't even stand up, and they just simply lay and crawl and sort of waddle across the ground, trying to get to their victim and eating everything in their path, eating earthworms, whatever they can. And then there's a new and much more advanced kind of infected, which they dub the Alpha. It's a much stronger and faster version of the normal infected that we've experienced up to this point. The Alpha, he takes point and almost kind of acts as like the leader of the pack of infected. He even has calls that he does and a certain level of intelligence beyond any of the regular infected below him. At one of the most intense chase sequences of the whole year involves this Alpha zombie, and I thought that scene was brilliantly shot. When you see the movie, you'll know the scene I'm talking about. You definitely will. Now, as I said earlier, there is a lot going on in this movie. There's a lot of stuff that takes place in just over 2 hours. It is a very jumbled movie with a lot going on. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but they are actually going to be making 2 more of these. Yes, this is the first movie in a new 28-year zombie trilogy. And, unfortunately, I have to say that very factor is what brings to the surface the weakest moments of the movie. They spend a lot of time world building in here, showing you how the world and the apocalypse have changed things and how society has evolved in the wake of it in the last 28 years. There's quite a bit of exposition and information that's thrown your way about how the world functions and works and, societal norms in this day and age. Now, this unfortunately can distract from the actual story at times. You see, the first 2 movies were not trying so hard to world build. They were simply focused on making a good solo standalone film. The first 2 films were also they were so well written that the world building just kind of naturally happened. They didn't have to devote so much time to trying to set so much up to be a multiverse or a multi-featured outing, but unfortunately that's kind of just how things are in today's Hollywood film industry. The focus on exposition in this movie definitely distracts from the story a bit at times, and I'm kind of hoping the next one will be a bit more straightforward and streamlined. I didn't agree with every decision they made in here. I almost would have preferred that they had spent the whole movie with the dad and his son, or with the mom and his son, instead of them switching it up halfway through. I get what they were trying to do, but I think that they were just trying to do what I felt was slightly a little too much with the allotted time they had. Now, all the actors do a phenomenal job. Alfie Williams, who plays the young Spike, the protagonist of the film, he is a star, taking charge in this movie like a boss. And alongside him is his dad, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, who's always fantastic. He has had a stellar last few years, and he is, of course, very good in here. We also have Jodie Comer showing some good vulnerability in here as Spike's seemingly terminally ill mother. We also have a very quick and what I would consider underused appearance by Ray Fiennes, who Only shows up for about 15 minutes, unfortunately, but trust me, he completely owns the 15 minutes he's on screen. I really hope we get to see his character a little more in the next film. Yeah, but also, like, what the f was with the, like, evangelical Power Rangers that showed up there at the end? That was so random. I mean, like, obviously, that was the kid from the opening scene of the movie, and him and his friends are all, like, Teletubby coordinated now, but, like, it just, that part, like, almost was a total buzzkill to everything you'd seen before that. I guess they're gonna dive a little more into that with the next movie. That was a really weird way to end the movie, I felt. Yeah, I really think the movie could have just ended, like, when Spike finished reading the letter that he sent his dad, and then that last scene could have been like a mid-credit scene. I think it would have worked better that way, personally. That's just me. Anyway, the next one we will be getting is entitled 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, and it comes out, I believe, closer to New Year's. I actually think it's 28 weeks from the release of this film. I see what they did there. Anyway, it's going to be directed by Nia DaCosta. So I like that they're kind of changing it up and, you know, bringing some young talent in, you know, young talented director like her, get a chance to show her chops here in this big budget horror film. So yeah, after sitting on this movie for about a week, I decided that ultimately the good parts of the movie ended up outweighing the parts I didn't like. Even when I was unsure where the film was going at times and thought the script was a little bit of a mess, I will admit that I was constantly entertained. I was definitely never bored. I was consistently treated to chaotic camera work and lots of intense action and a lot of creativity. So, the verdict? I liked this movie, but I didn't love it. Now that they've gotten what I guess you could call the first kind of expository film out of the way and gotten us all caught up in the world and gotten those familiarized who haven't seen the originals up to speed on things, I feel like they can go a lot harder with the next film, and I'm excited to see what they do, especially since they're handing the directing reins over to someone new now. I'm ambitious. We'll see. I'm going to give 28 Years Later a 7.2 out of 10. Well, this was fun. Thank you all so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
For this is a glorious day. A day of judgment. My children!
7, 6, 11, 5, 9 and 20 miles today, 4, 11, 17, 32 the day before. Boots, 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 moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war.